Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to M4L Academy. I am particularly excited today because we're in DC recording our Rhetoric for the Republic and had an opportunity to do a deep dive interview with one of our speakers, Andy Liddell. He has some amazing insights to share about the EdTech industry, and not to mention the data collection that you probably don't realize is happening on your children's devices from those schools. So without further ado, I'm super excited to be welcoming Andy Liddell to the show. And the way that we got introduced, really, or the way that you were kind enough to respond to me, I should say, is because I heard about you first on Screen Strong, and your story was absolutely amazing. So could you just go ahead and give us your background first and how you got started with what you're doing?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Missy. So I'm Andy Liddell. My wife, Julie, and I founded the EdTech Law Center in 2023 to help solve problems where school meets technology. We've been activists for a long time, arising from an incident in our own community in around 2019. I became involved in Fair Play as an activist, and then we just kept hearing the same stories over and over and over again, and realized that not only were kids' privacy rights being violated, kids were getting hurt in real, more immediate material ways through their computers at school, and we thought that was wrong, and these companies should be held legally accountable, and so we started our law firm to help them.
And that's the EdTech Law Center, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think it's very hard what you're doing because you're going up against some pretty big companies, right?
We are. Yeah, it's a real David and Goliath, but like I like to say, don't forget that David won, and we're right, and we're going to win.
That's so good. So I have some notes here from some of the past things I've heard you say that I thought this one was particularly interesting. So you have said EdTech is social media in a sweater vest, which I think is probably, first of all, it's hilarious, but I also don't think that's what people would think of, because there's a bit of a misnomer or misunderstanding perhaps that if something has the educational label, then it must be okay. So can you unpack what you mean by that?
Sure. Yeah. So that's my very good friend Emily Churkin came up with that. But she's let me use it. So ed tech is big tech in a sweater vest, and the idea is that the business model is the same. So social media, ed tech, the entire internet has this business model that's relatively new and different from what we grew up with. So I started kindergarten in 1989, and computers were really different in 1989. And I think we all, think about how things were when we were kids, when we think about our own kids in school. And, unless you've been really, studying this stuff like I have, it's easy to miss. And it's easy just to think, oh, this is the internet. But this is an internet. This is not the way the internet always was. It's not the way the internet always has to be. But this particular internet has changed in ways that are very harmful to the human user on the other side of the screen.
What I've realized recently is that I was applying a bit of my childhood perspective of which was less tech experience, to then getting exposed to tech and being involved in tech and thinking that my kids would be okay. So do you think that's a common misconception that parents are making?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And also to be fair, these companies are going way out of their way to obscure what they're doing with all the information they collect behind the scenes and selling their products as being, oh, well, look how cool and useful and good this is for you, or at least they used to. Now that everybody's locked in, we're all trapped in this ever worsening experience. But at least in the beginning, these things they're subsidized by a lot of venture capital. They're fun. They're not worried about making money. So it's easy to get people on board. But then over time, it becomes a lot less fun and a lot more of a coercive environment.
Oh my God, it's so true. And it's awful to think that they're doing this with our kids and our kids' data. So let's talk about that for a little bit, because we all do these I agree to everything, and you sign your life away in order to play Farmville or whatever your app is, Candy Crush, right? But we know it's almost like we're so desensitized to it. I think, though, a lot of people probably don't even think of school devices tracking our data. So can you talk a little bit to what kind of data is being tracked? What do they need to know?
So it's literally everything.
Oh.
It's literally everything. And so you think about the obvious stuff, like, your attendance records and your end of term grades, right? Or then your homework grades, your assignments. Then there's all this other stuff of how quickly are you completing your assignments? Are you rushing through them? Are you taking your time? And there's enough data being exchanged that, at least the ideal of these companies, certainly the ones that target adults, they want to complete what they call a psychographic profile. So a psychological demographic profile of you that they can use in all kinds of ways. Because basically the idea is that they can predict what you're going to do. That prediction is valuable, and they sell that prediction to somebody else looking to make money based on what they think you're going to do, right? And so a simple example, buying a new TV. Well, I want to make sure that my ads are only going to people who are going to buy a new TV. And so there's a thing called a real-time bidding market where this goes out instantly and is traded among these data brokers. And so, it's not an exaggeration to say for many people, they know where you are and what you're thinking at all times. And that sounds crazy and it sounds overstated, but really good reporting and treatises have been written on this. I mean, really, really solid reporting has shown what these companies are trying to do and what they're at least, desiring to do. And school really isn't any different, because if you think about how valuable it is to get inside of an adult's head, well, so much more so of a child.
So why? I have my thoughts for it, but tell me, why should we be more concerned? Why would it be more valuable to get inside the head of a child?
Well, I mean, that's what therapy is for, right?
That's true.
Right. If you think about things like set your personality and what you're good at in school, I mean, if you think about, and again, this is all theoretical, but you just have to think what's the worst thing I can think of, and then realize there's a lot of people who are being paid to think of much worse things than you are. But you have predatory loans, and you want to target people who are really bad at math. Well, if that information's out there somewhere, then you can find a way to do that. And so, one potential example of how this stuff could be misused.
That's such a good example, though, because this is the kind of thing that I love talking about so much, because if you're not in the space, then chances are, I think most people are not malicious people, and it's not even going to occur to you that someone would do something like that. It sure wouldn't occur to me. Mm-hmm. Gosh, that's just absolutely wild. Some other areas where I've seen the concept, and I think that maybe you can validate this or tell me I'm crazy, is by getting to know who the child is and getting in their brain, you can actually start to shift their perspective. But could that also, what other parts of EdTech should we be concerned about?
Well, I'm concerned about all of it. I'm concerned about the efficacy of it. I'm concerned that, it's really disrupting what education is for. I'm concerned that it's deprofessionalizing the teaching workforce, and that it's instrumentalizing children as just, means of collection. The idea that, that you basically performance-based funding, I think, is a really dangerous and counterproductive idea, because the ones that are good get more, the ones that are bad get less. A lot of this ed tech is put in place to hit metrics that that have been variously set by George W. Bush and then Obama and then Trump and Biden. This has been a bipartisan thing.
Yeah.
There's been a big bipartisan consensus on this, where with a lot of things that have happened this century, I think each successor has kind of made it worse in certain ways.
Yeah.
And so and now we're at a point where we've in 12 years of this new ed tech revolution have erased 50 years of progress across all the core subjects, beginning in 2012. And 2012 was the year these one-to-one devices came online, and we allowed companies who are expert in manipulating attention to be the ones to put these things into school. Well, attention is the thing you need to learn. That is one fundamental thing, right? And if you let companies like Google, whose whole business model is premised on pointing your attention where it makes them the most money, well, no wonder kids have lost a tremendous amount of gains, because what we experience as distraction, just messing around online, Google experiences as profit because we're messing around online, and that's data for them. And so even kids are less computer literate than they were. We all know, and yes.
Wait a minute. What?
In 2018, kids were quite a bit more computer literate than they were. And I believe 2024 was the subsequent study. It had fallen, by an appreciable amount, both in understanding, how computers work, and then computational thinking as well.
Wow.
Because it just isn't the case that by putting a kid next to a computer, they learn how the computer works, especially if
that's fair.
Right? They're not receiving direct instruction about the computer, about how it does work, and you're just online, and your attention is drawn to these things that are the most tantalizing. And it's not only drawn to those things, you're being pushed in that direction. And so, when a kid is, looking at 10,000 YouTube videos in a 6-week period, like some of my clients have, well, that's not necessarily a fault of the kid. That could be an underlying, issue with ADHD or autism sometimes, but it's also, why is this even possible? Why is this an environmental hazard for this child whatsoever? They don't need to be on YouTube at school. And these companies have, it's no secret, behavioral engineers. And there is this whole science that's called persuasive design that arose in Stanford in the late 1990s. So I guess stepping back, so we have two things that happened around the same time. So we had Google invented this new business model of the internet. And so I'm old enough that the internet was a thing we used to pay for by the minute, right? And
I remember that.
It was loud. I mean, I think people don't even remember the modem sounds, but so it was loud, it was slow, and it was expensive. And so it was naturally limiting what you had to do online. Then we had the dot-com, boom, bubble, burst, and some survivors were still hanging out. And so Google found a way to turn what they used to call digital exhaust into profit. That basically they collected all of this information about users, technical information, what we call metadata, all these things that were technically necessary, useful in some ways, but largely were thrown away. And they were able to, algorithmically and with a bunch of very smart people, figure out, we can use, this is actually suggestive of people's intent, and we can understand what they're going to do next. And by knowing what they're going to do next, we can advertise against that. That's how all this stuff started, was advertising. Because, the way the internet started out, people became very quickly unaccustomed to paying for content. And so that's how they got started. I can choose to interact with the thing up to a point, but then, I accomplish my task, I get bored, I move on. But Google doesn't want you to move on. They want you to stay. And so then persuasive design was this other discipline that arose around the same time out of Stanford. And basically that was the idea that you can use a computer to influence human behavior for the benefit of somebody else. And if you think about 1998, giant computers, slow internet, that seemed pretty radical. But as they became smaller, shrunk to the size of a smartphone, is actually much, much easier to do that. And so it sits at the intersection of computer science and human psychology. And what behavior engineers do is they use our human nature against us. Things that we naturally do, they redirect those things to benefit themselves.
So obviously EdTech must be doing this in some way. What are they doing to utilize this persuasive design?
So that comes up often in these gamified apps. And so basically it's a math game or vocabulary game or whatever, but emphasis hugely on the game part.
Okay.
And so it's gamified education. It's the variable reward that's at the heart of the gamification. This idea of the variable reward that keeps you coming back. And so the idea that when you log on to whatever your social media app of choice is, you don't really know what's there, what's going to be next.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you, by doing this hook cycle enough times, you associate, I look at my phone, and then the first thing I do is open my social media app. And then I go to this, I go to that. And you basically are visually cued to do a behavior.
Wow.
And so, it's really sophisticated stuff.
Yeah.
I'm very offended by it. but it doesn't mean it's not clever and interesting, and certainly is serving their bottom line.
Yeah.
But, I think it's very, very hostile to human agency and not things we want used on our kids. And so in a similar way, you have things like, loot boxes. And so those are variable rewards that happen in video games.
Yeah.
And so, you beat a level and you might get, a relatively common new, skin or outfit or whatever. Or you might get something really rare and you don't really know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And so, or you might get to choose. You might get to, click one of 3 boxes and something comes out. But it's sort of gambling light for children. And again, I've had clients talk about, and they're embarrassed, but like my kid's addicted to this math game. They're like destroying their academic record just by playing this math game at school, and they're baffled by it.
Yeah.
And those types of things are pretty prevalent in EdTech because there is this idea of gamified education somehow is beneficial for kids.
Yeah.
But it's really not. It's good for these companies. It can sell more because what they say is, well, look how the kids love it because they're look how much they're playing it.
Yeah.
But that's like saying, well, look how much this gambling addict loves to gamble, or how much this heroin addict loves heroin. Yeah, right? They're not really developing a love for math. They're developing a compulsion to play the math game.
And now I think seeing so much with gamification of education that unfortunately parents get duped because we want to do the best for our kids and we're told it's okay. And most of the time, I think you look back like, I remember playing whatever silly
Oregon Trail.
Right? Yes. Which, did we learn anything from it other than we all died from dysentery?
I learned what dysentery was.
I don't think I even actually really knew what dysentery was. Like, I knew that I would die from it though. Yeah. I mean, and that's such a great example. Like, that was such a game. It was a game. It was a game first. It so was. Okay, so let's dive back, because when we first talked, one of the most interesting things that you helped me to understand is how greatly lacking we are in the data protections area, because I think, when was the last law? We're like 20, 30 years ago?
The major one protecting kids is COPPA, and that was from 1998.
Like, that's insane to me. Like you were just saying, very different world, 1998 to today. So and then is FERPA the other one? Can you just explain what those two laws are?
Sure, yeah. So let's start with FERPA. So FERPA came out of kind of the rights revolution of the late 60s and 70s after, there were a lot of abuses of civil rights, and, the government cracked down on war protesters, and they would actually go and pull their college records and then target them for retaliation for speaking out. And then Christopher Buckley, Republican, I think from Connecticut, led the charge with FERPA, because he thought, well, we can't be using kids' academic records this way, right? Everybody has a right to privacy in their academic records and a right to know who they're being disclosed to and why. But the idea was, we're going to establish very, very tight controls on your education record. And it applied to schools, and essentially said schools only in very limited circumstances can disclose information about a student without their consent if they're over 18, or without their parents' consent if they're under 18. They did establish what they called a school official exception, which is if there is a person who's acting under the direct control of the school, then certain information about a student could be disclosed to that person without consent, but that person can't redisclose that information, right?
Okay.
So once you redisclose it, you're no longer a school official. And then we have COPPA, which came along in 1998, and it was meant to provide additional privacy protections to kids online under 13. And so, again, it established very strict rules that if you are an internet company and you know that you're interacting with a kid under 13, then you have to collect almost no information about them. And the only information you can collect is to get permission from their parents to collect more information.
Why under 13, just out of curiosity?
I don't know. I think that was just the settlement that came out. The idea was that, kids are online, and, but I really don't know, but I suspect it was a compromise.
Yeah.
But neither of those laws did away with the entire other body of privacy law that exists, right? We still have all of this other privacy law that exists, that is found in the Constitution and state constitutions, in the common law, and so we have a lot of privacy protection. But what has happened is FERPA applies to schools and is enforceable by the education department only as of 2002, which was the same year that surveillance capitalism was invented. And then COPPA, there's no private right of action there either. It's enforceable only by the Federal Trade Commission and state attorneys general. And so these laws have gone under-enforced for a long time. At the same time, the EdTech industry has built up, what essentially are urban legends about what these laws allow them to do. And they establish this conventional wisdom that doesn't exist anywhere in the law.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm happy to go into that if
Please
you
do.
want.
Because I think a lot of people misunderstand what is happening with this.
Right. And so basically, again, you and I, adults online, we use a product on our phone. If a company were to take all this information from us without our consent, that would be unlawful. That we could sue them for that, for an invasion of privacy. What makes it okay is that they have this term of service, and they say, this is everything we're taking from you, and this is how we're using it. And by using our product, you consent to these terms. And so this consent by conduct paradigm has arisen, last 30 years. Mm-hmm. But we had the problem with FERPA and the problem with COPPA, right? Because you need to get parent consent, and it's cumbersome to get parent consent. Nobody wants to get parent consent because then you have to tell them what you're doing and get them to agree to it, right? And so as an in run around trying to get parent consent, The industry basically came up with the idea that under FERPA, companies are school officials, and that everything a company can contrive to collect about a kid at school is an education record, and therefore parental consent is never required. And they have that written up in their contracts. So some of these companies do.
Wait a minute. They write it up in the contracts with the schools?
Or they're just their general terms of service that says, we are a school official under FERPA, and that means we can take everything from you without consent, and we can use it however we want.
And now you said that if they redisclose it, then it's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So
yes, and also that FERPA applies to schools, not companies. So,
well, yeah,
right?
Definitely.
There's several gaping holes in this logic, but it's gone unchallenged for a long time because, FERPA also, the enforcement mechanism is very, very harsh, which is we take federal funding away from the school that violated FERPA. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to further attack and defund our public schools. And so FERPA has really, at least in this realm, has gone basically unenforced for 50 years.
Oh my gosh.
And so, again, I think for well-intended reasons, also, the Ed department isn't always the best resource. There's other, bigger fish to fry.
Wait a minute. What well-intended reasons are there for not enforcing this, though?
Maybe more structural reasons. If you have like blatant civil rights violations happening, right? You only have so many lawyers.
That's fair.
So,
100%.
And these things, they're kind of abstract and they're hidden too, because people don't really appreciate everything that happens when your data is being collected by these companies. And so they also developed a whole big lie about COPPA too, and that basically said that COPPA allows schools to stand in the shoes of parents and make decisions about what is okay and not okay to collect about kids.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. It's not in the law either. And so the text of the law says nothing about that. There are 5 enumerated exceptions in COPPA. None of them have to do with schools.
Oh, my goodness.
And that language comes from, the manifestly non-binding, what's called the Statement of Basis and Purpose. But it's just this front material giving context to the law, and then the law that Congress passed, the rule that the administrative agency adopted. And it was one line taken totally out of context that has then, again, through federal non-enforcement across many administrations and through industry repeating it over and over again, become the conventional wisdom. But the conventional wisdom isn't enough to override the text of the law, which says if you're going to collect information about kids under 13, you need parents' permission. But companies have gone so far to say that not only does this allow us to take, that schools can stand in parents' shoes and decide what information is taken about kids, they can also decide to waive a kid's right to a jury trial and force them into binding arbitration. And so
my goodness.
we have a case up on appeal before the Ninth Circuit that's going to be heard in early January about this exact issue. And very, very encouragingly, 2 consecutive Federal Trade Commission boards have weighed in. And so under Lena Khan, they submitted a unanimous amicus brief at the trial level. And then on appeal, the FTC under Commissioner Andrew Ferguson also submitted a unanimous amicus brief, basically in support of our position, which is this is not what the law says. Under 13 means under 13. Verified parent consent means they're actual parents. So we're feeling good about that, and it is encouraging to see the continuity of thought across 2 pretty different administrations.
Yeah.
And so but this is what the industry said, and these are basically the pillars that this whole thing exists on. The third leg of the stool is that actually you have no right of privacy at school at all.
Whoa, is that a new thing?
That's what they're saying.
Oh, wow.
And basically, everyone knows how the internet, the internet's different now, and everyone knows when you sit down in front of a computer, we take everything and use it however we want to. And so you have no expectation of privacy at school, which again, wildly unconstitutional. This is not, you can't just do away with the Constitution because it suits your business model. And so I expect that's where the fight's going to move now, which is they're going to try and say, well, kids have, they have no expectation of privacy whatsoever. But we have a long history to the contrary that says, you can't just open a kid's backpack without reason to, or search their locker without reason to, or make them take a drug test without reason to. And so, we are confident that if the terrain shifts that way, we'll beat them there too.
Well, that's good. That is encouraging. It's so good to hear the positivity, because sometimes when you see David and Goliath, it gets, Goliath gets a little scary looking.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Yeah. And but it's encouraging to know that there really are so many good people out there, especially once they realize what's happening. Well, all right. So to wrap it up, what would, first of all, let everyone know where can they follow you, find out more about what you're doing, if that's something you want. I
For
don't know.
sure. Oh,
Okay,
absolutely.
great.
Yeah, yeah. So the EdTech Law Center, we're a consumer protection law firm in Austin, Texas. So we are contingency fee based, meaning that people don't pay out of pocket for our services. Julie and I, it's very important to us that there are no barriers to people who need our services. And we talked a lot about data today, but our cases span a pretty wide range. And so if there's a product that your kid is using that you're concerned about, reach out and we can talk about the privacy aspects of that. We do very thorough investigations before we ever file a lawsuit about their data practices. But parents may also have more immediate harms about, my kid has become addicted to YouTube, or my kid is being sexually solicited by a stranger, or my kid is, being sexually extorted by a stranger, or cyberbullied, or have AI deepfakes made of them. All these things where you don't expect that to happen when your kid goes to school, and they used to not happen. Ultimately, it's not on the school, it's not on the parents, it's not on the kid. The company needs to play by the same rules as everybody else. And so, if basically the way we put it, we solve problems where school meets technology. If a bad thing has happened to your kid on a computer at school, give us a call. And so,
Awesome.
we're at edtech.law. There's a little contact us box. Fill out the form, and we'll get in touch with you as soon as we can.
And I can attest that you are quick to respond, which is awesome. And that was not even with a business thing. So it was just for a great conversation.
We certainly do our best. I think things have picked up since we last talked. And so
I got you at a lucky time.
but we will respond. We definitely will respond. Yeah.
And I believe it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have do you have any like final things or any bit that you would like to leave people with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is, if you're struggling with this stuff, you're not alone. We talk to parents all across the country. I mean, big cities, small towns, far left, far right, in the middle. Like this is a thing that affects everybody. Mm-hmm. What we're doing right now with our kids and technology in school is not working.
Yeah.
And we all deserve better, and they especially deserve better.
I agree. And I would like to remind everybody that if you are curious about the reasons why it's not working, we actually had some great folks on one of our recent episodes that we were talking about the cognitive declines and everything that was happening. So that's one reason why I didn't need to drill you on that, although I know that you are very aware of all that stuff. So thank you so much for joining us. And now I am super excited to dive into the debate in just a little bit.
Can't wait.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us for today's discussion with Andy Liddell. As always, please come back to see all the things that we're creating at m4lacademy.org. As a reminder, we cover topics that are impacting kids, schools, and parental rights. We pick one topic each month. If you go to our website and look under the resource library, you'll see all sorts of things already covered, including SEL, CRT, gender ideology, CSE, and so much more. We've got more technology topics coming up. You're not going to want to miss it, so stay tuned. Thank you again, and we will see you after the debate.